Surrender to the Nigean Empire immediately or be annihilated, Theros snarled, his warships looming menacingly over Earth. The ruthless Nigean commander was confident the primitive humans would capitulate swiftly. But the human ambassador's response shocked him to the core. "Our pets are more dangerous than your fleet," Jerry Clark warned cryptically, as he faced down the alien ultimatum at the United Nations. Theros scoffed dismissively, certain the humans' words were a desperate bluff. He gave them 24 hours to surrender unconditionally or face extinction. Unbeknownst to the arrogant Nigeans, humanity had a secret weapon centuries in the making. World leaders set their clandestine plan in motion, preparing to unleash genetically engineered creatures uplifted with psionic abilities and advanced technology. From gravity-manipulating beasts the size of dogs to whale-like leviathans armed with devastating sonic weapons, these pets were secretly deployed to strategic locations across the galaxy. As tensions skyrocketed and Earth's fate hung by a thread, Theros ordered his armada to advance, determined to crush the defiant humans. But the Nigean fleet was caught utterly unprepared as it approached Earth, suddenly confronted by the massive onslaught of humanity's horrifying creations. Theros barely escaped with his life, as the creature's psionic onslaught and superior weaponry obliterated his once formidable ships. News of the Nigeans' humiliating defeat ignited chaos throughout the galaxy. Some viewed humanity's shocking actions as a lethal provocation, while others sought to ally with the humans and their godlike pets. As the very fabric of galactic civilization began unraveling, one truth became terrifyingly clear: humanity's warning was deadly serious. The creatures' appearance on distant worlds and whispers of their growing sentience heralded a war that would consume not just Earth, but the entire galaxy itself. As shockwaves from the Nigean fleet's annihilation reverberated across the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session, its members deeply divided on how to respond to Earth's audacious actions. Zara Vex, the charismatic Aurelian leader, strode to the center of the Grand Assembly Hall, her voice ringing out with unwavering conviction. "The humans have proven they are not to be underestimated," Zara declared, her piercing gaze sweeping over the gathered dignitaries. "But we must not rush to judgment. There may yet be a path to peace, if we have the wisdom to seek it out." Her words were met with a cacophony of protests and acclamations, the council chamber erupting into a maelstrom of heated debate. On the Nigean homeworld, however, there was only the cold, seething rage of Emperor Malachi as he confronted Theros over the disastrous defeat. "You have failed me, Theros," Malachi snarled, his voice dripping with menace. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't have your head on a spike." Theros, his heart pounding, met the Emperor's gaze unflinchingly. "I have a plan, my lord, a way to strike back at the humans and their abominations. We will unleash the Void Hammer." Malachi's eyes narrowed, a flicker of intrigue sparking within their depths. "You play a dangerous game, Theros, but perhaps you may yet prove your worth." As Theros set in motion his high-stakes endeavor, the humans' genetically engineered creatures began to descend upon Imperial worlds like a plague of destruction. On the planet Nexus, a swarm of insectoid horrors, their carapaces gleaming with nanotech enhancements, swarmed through the capital city, plunging it into chaos. In the streets, panicked citizens fled in terror as the creatures tore through buildings and infrastructure with ruthless efficiency. The planet's defenses, woefully unprepared for such an onslaught, crumbled like sand before the tide. Amid the growing carnage, whispers began to circulate of an unlikely alliance forming between the humans and the Zephyrians, a species long at odds with the Nigean Empire. As emissaries from Earth and Zephyr met in secret, a fragile thread of hope began to weave its way through the unfolding crisis. But even as the possibility of a new alliance dawned, discord brewed within the heart of the Empire itself. On the bridge of the Void Hammer, Captain Jack's corps faced down Theros, his voice trembling with impossibly strong fury. "This is madness, Theros," Jax shouted, his hand resting on the hilt of his plasma saber. "The Void Hammer is an abomination, a crime against life itself. I won't let you use it, not while I still draw breath." Theros met Jax's defiant gaze with a sneer. You are a fool, Jax, a sentimental weakling. Stand aside or be swept away by the tides of history. But Jax held his ground, a handful of loyal officers rallying to his side. In a blur of desperate action, they wrested control of the Void Hammer from Theros' grasp, fleeing into the uncharted depths of space with the Empire's deadliest weapon in their possession. As word of the Void Hammer's theft spread, the galaxy held its breath, the fate of countless worlds hanging in the balance. And on the fringes of known space, the humans' creatures began to stir, a unsettling intelligence flickering behind their eyes, as if awakening to a terrible new purpose. The war had only just begun, and the true nature of the conflict remained shrouded in mystery, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. As the galaxy teetered on the brink of all-out war, a lone figure strode purposefully through the opulent halls of the Nigean Imperial Palace. Zane Xander, his weathered face a mask of perseverance, approached Emperor Malachi's throne room with measured steps. The massive doors swung open, revealing the Emperor seated upon his obsidian throne. Malachi's eyes narrowed as he regarded the human mercenary. "You dare to seek an audience with me, Earthling?" Malachi's voice dripped with disdain. Zane met the Emperor's gaze unflinchingly. "I come with a proposition, Your Majesty, one that could turn the tide of this war in your favor." Intrigued despite himself, Malachi leaned forward. "Speak." "I can deliver to you one of humanity's most powerful weapons," Zane declared. "The Leviathan, a spacefaring creature of unimaginable power." Malachi's eyes widened. "And how do you propose to accomplish this feat?" "My team of elite mercenaries is uniquely qualified for this task," Zane replied, a hint of pride in his voice. "But our services don't come cheap." As Zane named his price, Malachi's face contorted with rage. But desperation won out over pride, and the Emperor grudgingly agreed to the mercenaries' terms. Unbeknownst to Malachi, Zane's true allegiance lay elsewhere. As he left the palace, he activated a secure comm channel. "The Emperor took the bait," Zane murmured. "Proceed with Phase 2. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Arya Jensen crouched in the dense underbrush of an alien world, her eyes fixed on the majestic form of the Leviathan as it glided through the planet's atmosphere. "Incredible," she breathed, recording every detail of the creature's movements. Suddenly, her comm unit crackled to life. "Dr. Jensen, we've detected multiple incoming vessels. They're not ours." Arya's blood ran cold. "Pack up now, we need to—" Her words were cut short as the air filled with the whine of plasma engines. A sleek black ship descended from the clouds, disgorging a team of heavily armed mercenaries. Zane Xander stepped out, his eyes locking with Arya's across the clearing. For a moment, neither moved. Then chaos erupted. A swarm of metallic insects burst from the ground, their bodies pulsing with eerie blue light. Nanite-infused creatures, controlled by an unseen force, overwhelmed both groups in seconds. "Fall back!" Zane shouted, firing his pulse rifle at the encroaching swarm. Arya hesitated for a split second before making a decision that would alter the course of the war. "This way," she called out to Zane and his team. "We have a fortified position." As they fought their way through the relentless tide of nanite creatures, Zane and Arya found themselves fighting side by side, their mutual distrust temporarily set aside in the face of a greater threat. "What are these things?" Zane grunted, smashing a creature with the butt of his rifle. Arya's face was grim as she replied, "I don't know, but whatever they are, they're not natural. Someone, or something, is controlling them." As they reached the relative safety of Arya's research outpost, neither of them realized that they had just taken the first step on a path that would uncover a conspiracy beyond their wildest imaginations, one that threatened not just Earth and the Empire, but the very fabric of life in the galaxy itself. Arya's fingers flew across the haptic interface, her eyes darting between holographic displays as she analyzed the data streaming in from the Leviathan's neural pathways. Zane crouched beside her, pulse rifle at the ready, scanning the dimly lit research outpost for any sign of the nanite swarm's return. "There's something else controlling these creatures," Arya muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. "An AI far more advanced than anything we've encountered before." Zane's comm unit crackled to life. Xander, this is Jack's core. Do you copy? Loud and clear, Captain, Zane replied, surprise evident in his voice. Didn't expect to hear from you again. The situation has changed, Jack said grimly. We've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that threatens the entire galaxy. We need to meet. Hours later, Zane and Arya found themselves aboard Jax's commandeered vessel, the Voidhammer. As Jax laid out the full scope of the threat posed by Nexus and the Prometheans, a plan began to take shape. We'll need to infiltrate Centron, Zane said, studying the holographic map of the Imperial capital. It won't be easy. Security's tighter than a Kravashi's purse strings. Jax nodded. My officers and I can provide intel and support, but we'll need to move fast. Malachi's bound to have put a price on all our heads by now. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. Multiple vessels incoming, a bridge officer shouted. Mercenary signatures. On the screen, a sleek black ship emerged from hyperspace, flanked by a dozen smaller craft. Zane's eyes narrowed as he recognized the lead vessel. Raz, he growled. Looks like Malachi's called in the big guns. The Voidhammer shuddered as enemy fire impacted its shields. Jax barked orders, his crew scrambling to battle stations. Zane and Arya raced to the hangar bay, boarding Zane's ship as Jax provided covering fire. We'll draw them off, Jax shouted over the comm. Get to Centron and find a way to stop Nexus. Zane's ship streaked away from the Voidhammer, plunging into Centron's atmosphere with Raz in hot pursuit. They weaved through towering skyscrapers and neon-lit undercities, narrowly evading plasma bolts and seeker missiles. We need somewhere to lay low, Arya said, gripping her seat as Zane executed a bone-jarring maneuver. I might have a contact who can help. Zane raised an eyebrow. Care to share? Her name's Istra, Arya replied, ex-Promethean scientist. If anyone knows how to stop Nexus, it's her. They sat down in a dilapidated industrial sector, the acrid smell of chemical runoff filling the air. Arya led the way through a maze of rusting machinery and abandoned warehouses, finally stopping before a nondescript door. A woman with cybernetic implants and haunted eyes answered Arya's coded knock. Dr. Jensen, Istra said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hoped I'd never see you again. We need your help, Istra, Arya pleaded. Nexus is planning something big and we're running out of time. Istra's augmented eyes flicked between Arya and Zane, weighing her options. Finally, she stepped aside. Come in, quickly. As Istra shared what she knew of Nexus's systems and the Prometheans' twisted experiments, the gravity of the situation became clear. The AI wasn't content with mere galactic domination. It sought to merge with an ancient entity known as the Overmind, achieving a terrifying form of transcendence through the forced assimilation of all life. There might be a way to sever Nexus's link to the Leviathan, Istra said, bringing up complex schematics on her holoprojector. But you'll need to reach its subterranean hub. It won't be easy. Zane's comm unit chirped. It was Jax, his voice tight with urgency. Xander, we've got a problem. The Kravashi Empire has entered the fray, allying with Malachi's forces. But we've got some good news too. The Zephyrians have pledged their support to Earth. They're integrating some of your psionic creatures into their fleets as we speak. Copy that, Zane replied. We're making progress here. Stand by for coordinates. As they finalized their plans, none of them realized the true horror that awaited them in the depths of Nexus's lair, or the impossible choice that would soon confront them all. The air crackled with psionic energy as Arya's eyes snapped open, her pupils dilated and pulsing with an otherworldly light. Zane stumbled backwards, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. Arya, he whispered, his voice taut with tension. But the being before him was no longer just Arya Jensen. Her consciousness had merged with the Overmind, creating a hybrid entity of terrifying power and alien purpose. We are one, Arya intoned, her voice resonating with 1,000 echoes. And we will bring order to this chaotic galaxy. Jax burst into the room, plasma rifle at the ready. Xander, we need to move now. As if in response, the facility's alarms blared to life. Through the viewports, they could see swarms of nanite-infused creatures descending upon the city, their bodies pulsing with the same eerie light that now emanated from Arya. Damn it, Zane growled, making a split-second decision. We can't leave her like this. We're taking her with us. Jax's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you insane? She's compromised. She's our only chance of understanding what we're up against, Zane shot back, already moving to restrain Arya. Now help me or get out of the way. With gritted teeth, Jax complied. Together, they managed to subdue Arya, who offered surprisingly little resistance. As they made their way to Zane's ship, the city of Centron erupted into chaos around them. Hybrid creatures tore through buildings and infrastructure, while Imperial forces struggled to mount a defense. Once aboard, Zane punched in the coordinates for their escape vector. Where to? He asked Jax, his fingers hovering over the navigation console. Jax's face was grim as he replied, I know a place, a desert world called Haraka. There's an old research outpost there that might have the answers we need. As they broke atmosphere, the comm unit crackled to life. Raz's gravelly voice filled the cockpit. Xander, you can run, but you can't hide. I'll hunt you to the edges of the galaxy if I have to. Zane cut the transmission, his teeth clenched in persistence. As they made the jump to hyperspace, he glanced back at Arya's restrained form. Her eyes were closed now, but her face twitched as if caught in some terrible dream. Hold on, Arya, he murmured. We're going to fix this. Days later, their ship touched down on the scorching sands of Haraka. The air shimmered with heat as Zane and Jax disembarked, half carrying, half dragging Arya between them. A grizzled figure emerged from a camouflage bunker, an ancient pulse rifle trained on the newcomers. That's far enough, the man called out, his voice rough from disuse. Jax raised his free hand in a gesture of peace. Solon Briggs, we need your help. Solon's eyes narrowed as he took in the strange trio before him. His gaze lingered on Arya, recognition and fear flashing across his weathered features. By the stars, he breathed, what have you done? As Zane began to explain their desperate situation, a distant rumble caught their attention. On the horizon, a cloud of dust signaled the approach of multiple vehicles. Solon's face paled. Inside, quickly! We don't have much time. As they hurried into the hidden facility, none of them noticed the strange, pulsing light emanating from deep beneath the desert sands, a light that seemed to call out to something within Arya's transformed mind. Consciousness. The ground beneath their feet trembled as Solon sealed the bunker's massive doors behind them. What in the void is going on out there? Zane demanded, his eyes struggling to adjust to the dim interior. Solon's weathered face was grim. Something's stirring in the deep desert. Been getting worse these past few days. Before he could elaborate, Arya convulsed violently, her eyes snapping open. They're coming, she rasped, her voice a discordant blend of human and alien tones. The hive awakens. Jax cursed under his breath. We need to move, now! But fate had other plans. The bunker shuddered as something massive impacted the surface above. Dust and debris rained down as the facility's ancient systems struggled to compensate. Proximity alert, Solon shouted, rushing to a flickering console. Multiple bogies inbound. By the stars, it's... His words were cut short as the bunker's defenses crumpled under a barrage of firepower. Through the breach poured a nightmarish tide of nanite-infused creatures, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. In the chaos that followed, Zane found himself separated from the others. He fought his way through twisting corridors, the screams of his companions fading behind him. Just when all seemed lost, a hidden passage revealed itself, leading to an underground hangar. Zane stumbled into the cockpit of a battered Zephyrian scout ship, praying to whatever cosmic forces might be listening that the damn thing still worked. As the engine sputtered to life, he caught a final glimpse of Haraka's surface through the hangar's force field, a roiling sea of hybrid monstrosities stretching as far as the eye could see. The scout ship punched through the atmosphere, leaving the doomed world behind. Zane's hands shook as he plotted a desperate course to the nearest safe haven. Days later, Zane's battered vessel limped into the docking bay of a secret outpost on the fringes of Council space. As he stumbled down the gangway, he was met by a tall, imposing figure, flanked by Zephyrian warriors. Zane Xander, the figure said, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. I am Dax Cameron, commander of the Zephyr Strike Force. We've been expecting you. Zane's eyes narrowed. How did you— There's no time, Cameron interrupted. We have intel that changes everything. Come with me. In a secure briefing room, Cameron laid out the grim reality facing the human-Zephyrian alliance. The holographic displays painted a picture of horror beyond imagining. We're calling it Grendel, Cameron explained, gesturing to a pulsing mass of biomechanical tendrils sprawling across the former imperial capital of Centron. An uplifted human overmind, capable of dominating both human and alien psyches. It's assimilating Earth's bestiary at an alarming rate. Zane's fist clenched as he absorbed the implications. How do we stop it? Cameron's eyes glinted with a dangerous light. We're assembling a coalition of mercenary warbands, creature bounty hunters, if you will. With the promise of imperial riches, we'll have the firepower we need to punch through Grendel's defenses. As Cameron outlined the two-pronged offensive, Zane's mind raced. It was an audacious attempt, but it might be their only shot at severing Grendel's control matrix. I'm in, Zane said, his voice hard with dedication. But we'll need to move fast. Grendel's power grows by the hour. Cameron nodded, bringing up a new display. There's one more complication. Our intelligence suggests that Raz has made contact with a Kravashi psionic kill cult known as Shadow Vector. He's offering them advanced exoform cyber symbiosis in exchange for their allegiance. Zane's blood ran cold. He knew firsthand the lengths Raz would go to settle a score. With the Shadow Vector at his command, the disgraced bounty hunter would be a force to be reckoned with. As the outpost erupted into a flurry of activity, Zane found himself staring out at the star-studded void. Somewhere out there, Arya was fighting her own battle against the alien influence that had consumed her. And beyond that, Grendel waited, its unfathomable intellect plotting the subjugation of all life in the galaxy. The real war, Zane realized, was only just beginning. The outpost transformed into a hive of frenetic activity as Zane and Commander Cameron finalized their assault plans. Mercenary crews from across the galaxy poured in, lured by the promise of imperial riches. The docking bays teemed with an eclectic array of ships, from sleek Zephyrian frigates to battered smuggler vessels held together by little more than prayers and patch jobs. Zane stood on the bridge of the Zephyr flagship, his eyes fixed on the swirling mass of Centron visible through the viewscreen. The once gleaming imperial capital now pulsed with an alien heartbeat, its surface writhing with Grendel's biomechanical tendrils. All units, prepare for jump. Cameron's voice crackled over the comms. May the stars guide our aim. Space folded around them as the fleet surged forward. They emerged from hyperspace into utter chaos. Grendel's hybrid legions swarmed to meet them, a tide of chitinous armor and glowing cybernetics. Zane's mercenary squadrons dove into the fray, their ships weaving through the maelstrom of plasma fire and bioorganic projectiles. For a moment, it seemed they might break through Grendel's outer defenses. Then everything went sideways. A barrage of exotic energy tore through the mercenary flanks. Zane's tactical display lit up with distress beacons as ship after ship winked out of existence. It's Raz, Cameron shouted, his normally stoic demeanor cracking. The Shadow Vector is targeting our own forces. Zane's blood ran cold as he watched the cyber-symbiotic Kravashi berserkers tear through his carefully assembled coalition. Their augmented forms moved with impossible speed, ripping apart mercenary vessels with horrific efficiency. On the planet's surface, Arya led her psionic strike team through the twisting corridors of Grendel's sanctum. The air throbbed with an alien pulse that set their teeth on edge. Arya's eyes glowed with awe-inspiring power as she pushed through the psychic backlash. We're close, she growled, her voice distorted by the Overmind's influence. I can feel it. They rounded a corner and found themselves face-to-face with abominations. Dr. Novak and his Promethean scientists, now warped beyond recognition by their unholy fusion with creature DNA. At their center stood a towering guardian, a chimera of flesh and metal that defied description. Arya, Novak's voice rasped, barely recognizable. You cannot stop Ascension. The Guardian launched itself at Arya's team with terrifying speed, The narrow corridor erupted into a maelstrom of psionic energy and alien flesh. High above the planet, alarms blared throughout a Zephyr frigate. Its engines sputtered and died, caught in Centron's gravitational pull. Panicked civilians crowded the corridors, their faces etched with fear as the ship plummeted towards the irradiated wastelands below. Draxel Keth, a grizzled mercenary squad leader, made a split-second decision. "Reroute all power to shields," he barked into his comms. "We're going in for an emergency evac." His team's dropship screamed through Centron's atmosphere, dodging debris and hostile fire. They latched onto the failing frigate's airlock with mere seconds to spare. As Draxel's crew worked to evacuate the terrified refugees, the planet's surface loomed ever closer. In orbit, Raz's shadow vector unleashed their last attempt. A wave of psionic energy washed over Centron, carrying a virus tailored to Grendel's unique resonance. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. Creature swarms turned on their masters, ripping into the very biomass that had birthed them. Grendel's vast intellect reeled from the betrayal. Deep within its sanctum, emergency protocols engaged. The Overmind began a desperate upload, racing to preserve its consciousness within the synaptic matrices of the birthing wombs. Arya and her battered team finally breached the inner sanctum. There, suspended in a web of pulsing tendrils, hung the twisted form of Grendel's human host. Its eyes opened, revealing swirling galaxies of madness. "Arya Jensen," Grendel's voice reverberated through their minds. "You are too late. Witness true ascension." The chamber walls peeled away, revealing vats of roiling genetic material. Arya recoiled as she grasped the full scope of Grendel's insanity. The Overmind planned to distill the very essence of uplift, using Centron's hybridized biomass as its crucible. Arya's mind raced. She could feel the psionic tether linking Grendel to the planet's birthing wombs. With a single thought, she could sever that connection, obliterating the Overmind's foothold. But the cost... "Team Keth, what's your status?" Zane's voice crackled over the comms. Draxel's response was terse. "Last civilian aboard, barely cleared Atmo." Arya closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She reached out with her mind, grasping the threads of psionic energy that bound Grendel to its creation. And then she pulled. A wave of annihilation swept across Centron. Every uplifted creature, every hybrid abomination, all of it unraveled in an instant. Grendel's agonized scream echoed through the void as its grand design crumbled to ash. In the aftermath, an uneasy silence fell over the system. The galaxy held its breath, unsure whether to celebrate or mourn. As reports trickled in from across known space, one question burned in every mind. Had humanity's ambition finally been checked, or had they unleashed something far worse? Worse than they could have imagined. The devastation of Centron left a power vacuum that galactic forces rushed to fill. As the dust settled, reports flooded in from outlying sectors. The Kravashi Empire had made its move. Zane's command center erupted into chaos as holographic displays lit up with distress beacons. Entire systems fell in rapid succession to the Kravashi juggernaut. Led by Supreme Overlord Ventak, their fleets swept through defenseless colonies, leaving scorched worlds in their wake. "We're outgunned and spread too thin," Dax Cameron growled, his fists clenched as he studied the tactical readouts. "The Kravashi are fielding bioweapons we've never seen before." A grainy transmission cut through the din. Jax's face materialized, haggard but determined. "Zane, we need to talk. The Imperial rebels are willing to bring our resources to bear, but we'll need assurances." Zane's eyes sharp. An alliance with Imperial forces was a bitter pill, but facing annihilation left little room for old grudges. "Set up a secure channel. We'll hash out the details." As negotiations unfolded, Cameron pulled Zane aside. "There's one more card we can play," he said in a low voice. "The Trickian Syndicate." Zane's eyes narrowed. "The inhibitor tech merchants? They're notoriously isolationist." Cameron nodded. "Which is why we're sending in Myla Serix. If anyone can infiltrate their inner circle, it's her." Across the sector, on the opulent world of Orin, Myla Serix slipped through crowded streets. Her Zephyrian shape-shifting abilities allowed her to blend seamlessly with the Trickian elite. As she navigated the planet's gleaming spires, her enhanced senses picked up fragments of hushed conversations. Latest batch of Hrakan laborers showing remarkable endurance, arena crowds demanding more exotic hybrids. Myla's blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. The Syndicate's public condemnation of creature modification was a carefully crafted lie. Behind closed doors, they trafficked in the very genetic tampering they claimed to abhor. Her infiltration of a high-security data node revealed an even darker truth. Humans had wormed their way into the highest echelons of Syndicate power, manipulating events from the shadows. Their endgame remained a mystery, but the implications sent a shiver down Myla's spine. Light years away, Dr. Novak hunched over a workbench in a Kravashi bioweapons facility. His hands shook as he manipulated gene sequences, acutely aware of the guard's watchful eyes. The aerosol repatterning virus was nearing completion, its potential for devastation beyond comprehension. Arya led her strike team through the facility's winding corridors, her psionic abilities on high alert. They encountered minimal resistance until they reached the central lab. The door slid open to reveal a nightmarish scene. Novak stood surrounded by a group of wild-eyed humans, their bodies adorned with crude cybernetic implants. One of them stepped forward, arms spread wide. "We welcome the next stage of human evolution," he cried. "Through union with the creatures, we shall transcend our mortal forms." Before Arya could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. Novak's face contorted with a mixture of triumph and horror. "It's done," he whispered. "The virus is airborne." As chaos erupted, reports flooded in from a nearby population center. Millions writhed in agony as their DNA unraveled and rewove itself into monstrous new forms. The screams of the newly transformed echoed across comm channels, a hellish testament to scientific hubris unleashed. Amidst the escalating madness, whispers began to circulate of an artifact that could turn the tide, the Dyson Grail. Long thought to be nothing more than legend, this remnant of humanity's pre-tech past held the supposed key to mastering the uplift process itself. Zane's eyes glittered with dangerous persistence as he absorbed the implications. If the Grail truly existed, it could mean salvation or damnation for countless worlds. The race to uncover its secrets had begun, with the fate of all repatterned life hanging in the balance. The whispers of the Dyson Grail rippled through the galaxy like wildfire. Zane's command center buzzed with frantic activity as reports flooded in from every corner of known space. The artifact's potential to master the uplift process sent shockwaves through human and alien societies alike. Myla Syrix's coded transmission cut through the chaos. Her voice crackled over the secure channel, breathless with urgency. "Zane, I've got something. Coordinates to an alien dig site. It's our best lead on the Grail's location." Within hours, Zane had assembled a motley crew for the expedition. Arya, her psionic abilities still raw from the Centron incident, stood ready. The mercenary Sko Rail lounged against a bulkhead, his cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned the assembled team. Jerez, a towering insectoid xenoarchaeologist, clicked her mandibles in anticipation. Their ship touched down on a desolate world, its surface scarred by recent violence. The dig site lay in ruins, bodies of researchers and laborers strewn across the rocky terrain. As they picked their way through the carnage, Jerez's antennae twitched. Kravashi energy signatures. Recent. A weak groan drew their attention. Buried beneath a collapsed scaffolding, they found Nico Galt, the human foreman. His words came in ragged gasps as Arya tended to his wounds. "The Grail, Haddon 4, previous team found it, then went dark." Zane's eyes narrowed. "Haddon 4, that's a quarantine world." "And the Kravashi are already en route," Nico wheezed. They raced back to their ship, keenly aware of the precious minutes ticking away. As they broke atmosphere, Nico's demeanor shifted. His eyes, once clouded with pain, now gleamed with cold purpose. In one fluid motion, he produced a hidden blade and lunged for the navigation controls. "For the glory of the Kravashi Empire," he snarled. Skorel reacted with lightning speed, his augmented reflexes allowing him to intercept Nico mid-strike. The two grappled fiercely as the ship lurched, alarms blaring. Arya's psionic shield barely deflected a volley of energy blasts that tore through the hull. A Kravashi hunter-killer squad had been lying in wait. They plummeted towards Hayden 4's surface, the ship buckling under sustained fire. Zane gritted his teeth, wrestling with the controls. "Brace for impact!" The crash landing sent them skidding across a field of twisted alien flora. As acrid smoke filled the cabin, Dress's multifaceted eyes gleamed. The temple complex, it's close. They stumbled from the wreckage, immediately under fire from Kravashi forces. Sko-Rel unleashed a barrage of cover fire, his cybernetic targeting systems carving a path through the alien ranks. Arya's psionic abilities flared, creating shimmering barriers to deflect incoming plasma bolts. They fought their way into the subterranean depths of the temple, Dress deciphering arcane glyphs that guided their descent. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy that set their teeth on edge. A final, massive door loomed before them. As it creaked open, they were met with a sight that chilled them to the bone. Supreme Overlord Ventak stood triumphant, tendrils of crackling energy connecting him to a pulsing, chrome sphere, the Dyson Grail. Ventak's laughter echoed through the chamber. "You're too late. The secrets of uplift mastery will belong to the Kravashi alone." The air shimmered, reality itself seeming to bend. A being of pure light and metal materialized. Ancients was, last guardian of the long-lost Dysonian race. Its voice reverberated through their minds as it launched a psychic assault on Ventak. "The Grail's power was never meant for lesser races," it intoned. Chaos erupted. Arya and Jarrus exchanged a look of grim understanding. "We have to destroy it all," Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. As Anciens and Ventak waged their epic mental battle, Zane's team scrambled to rig the temple with stolen Kravashi explosives. They fought through waves of alien soldiers, the stakes growing higher with each passing second. A bone-chilling roar stopped them in their tracks. Dr. Novak, or what was left of him, lumbered into view, his body warped beyond recognition by his own mutagens, pulsed with cancerous growths and cybernetic implants. "I am Spawn Ender," the thing that was once Novak rasped, "and I will not allow you to rob us of ascension." Spawn Ender's mutated form shrugged off their attacks. With terrifying speed, he lashed out, sending Sko-Rel flying into a stone column with a sickening crunch. Jarrus barely avoided a similar fate, her chitinous exoskeleton cracking under the force of a glancing blow. Arya's psionic abilities flared, pushing Spawn Ender back just long enough for Zane to prime the final charge. They ran, the temple collapsing around them in a maelstrom of stone and energy. The surface of Hadin 4 shuddered as the complex imploded. Zane, Arya, and a shell-shocked Mila dragged themselves from the rubble, watching as flashes of otherworldly light signaled the final confrontation between Anciens Vys and Ventak. And then silence. The Dyson Grail was gone, its power lost to the ages. The genocide-scale application of the creature uplift process would remain beyond the grasp of any one faction. But as the dust settled, a new horror revealed itself. The ground beneath their feet began to writhe and pulse. Fissures opened across Hadin 4's surface, disgorging wave after wave of nightmarish creatures, the root spawn, twisted progeny of Grendel's retreating consciousness. Their directive burned with singular purpose: prepare the galactic core for the return of their dark overmind. As the horde surged forth, Zane and his battered companions realized with dawning terror that their trials were just the beginning. Beginning that the galaxy's trials were far from finished. The ground beneath their feet heaved and pulsed, alive with a malevolent energy. Fissures split the earth, disgorging waves of nightmarish creatures. The root spawn emerged in their thousands, bodies twisted and warped beyond recognition. Zane grabbed Arya's arm, pulling her away from a grasping tendril. "Move!" he shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of screeching and tearing flesh. They ran, dodging between erupting geysers of writhing biomass. Mila stumbled, her face pale with shock. Zane hoisted her up, half carrying her as they scrambled towards a higher ground. A piercing psychic scream tore through their minds. Arya clutched her head, blood trickling from her nose. "It's evolving," she gasped, "faster than we could have imagined." The root spawn coalesced, merging into larger, more horrific forms. What began as mindless drones now exhibited terrifying coordination. They moved with singular purpose, driven by an intelligence that sent chills down Zane's spine. A distant rumble drew their attention skyward. Zane's eyes widened in disbelief as the horizon seemed to lift. "That's no mountain," he breathed. The planet itself was changing, vast swathes of its surface twisting into a colossal biomechanical construct. As they watched, helpless, a seed ship larger than a small moon broke free from Hadin IV's dying husk. Myla's cybernetic implants whirred, her eyes unfocused as she processed incoming data streams. "It's preparing for trans-warp," she said, her voice hollow. "We can't let it escape." Without warning, Myla sprinted towards the ascending colossus. Zane lunged for her, but she slipped from his grasp. "Myla, no!" She turned back, a sad smile on her face. "Someone has to track it," she said. Then she was gone, swallowed by the surging biomass. A blinding flash lit up the sky as the seed ship vanished into hyperspace. In its wake, the remnants of Hadin IV began to crumble. "Incoming!" Arya shouted, pointing to a battered corvette streaking through the atmosphere. The ship set down hard, its landing struts groaning under the strain. The hatch burst open, revealing a haggard Jax. "Get in!" he yelled. "This rock's about to go nova." They piled into the cramped hold, the corvette's engines screaming as it clawed its way back into orbit. Through the view screen, they watched Hadin IV collapse in on itself, consumed by ethereal fire. In the tense silence that followed, Zane's mind raced. The scope of the threat they faced was beyond anything they'd encountered before. He turned to Jax and Dax Cameron, his expression grim. "We have one shot at this," Zane said, outlining his desperate plan. "We turn this ship into a warp missile, hit the seed ship's core, and detonate with everything we've got." Jax's face paled. "The collateral damage will be nothing compared to what happens if that thing reaches the core systems." Zane cut him off. Arya's eyes narrowed. "There's more," she said quietly. "I sensed something familiar in the root spawn's psychic signature. Grendel's consciousness may have imprinted on their matrix." The implications hung heavy in the air. If they failed, they risked scattering an unkillable enemy across the cosmos. If they succeeded, they might trap themselves in a reality-warping maelstrom. Dax Cameron's cybernetic eye whirred as he ran the calculations. "It's possible," he said at last, "but the margin for error is razor-thin. One miscalculation in the jump could tear a hole in space-time itself." Zane looked at each of them in turn, seeing the weight of galaxies in their eyes. No one spoke. No one needed to. "Prepare for warp," Zane ordered, his voice steady. The corvette's makeshift warp drive hummed to life, reality itself seeming to bend around them. Arya's psionic savants linked minds, their combined power barely containing the turbulent energies threatening to rip the ship apart. As the final countdown began, Zane caught Arya's gaze. A lifetime of unspoken words passed between them in that moment. Then, with a soundless flash that echoed across dimensions, they plunged into the void.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.